My team at Summit have worked extensively with councils in supporting social workers to develop greater levels of healthy emotional intelligence. Now, emotional intelligence is one big subject, but there are very specific EQ competencies that are deserving of balance if a social worker, for example, is going to get the best from themselves, manage themselves more effectively or as effectively as possible, and deliver best value for the trusting customers and the council which employs them. One aspect that has really returned to the forefront each and every time we've worked with social workers is excessive levels of empathy. Now, empathy is often misunderstood as being nice, a bedside manner, almost sympathy, but sympathy is very, very different. Sympathy is if you feel really down or really bad, I'll come and join you there and I'll stay there with you. Empathy is the ability to step into someone else's world, see the world from their perspective, but also remember to step back out so you can get a more rounded, holistic way of thinking about what's going on, what decision deserves to be made, and what boundaries deserve to be in place. So in terms of empathy, the 50 that we explored in more detail, 47 of them had high levels of empathy. Not just high levels of empathy, but empathy levels that were out of balance with their self-awareness. So low level of self-awareness, as in I don't know what's going on, a low level of stress tolerance, because how can you spot the stress beginning to happen and manifest if you're not particularly aware, but also in terms of empathy, it was jumping into that person's world who was clearly suffering either from a disability or a disadvantage of some kind and deserving of help. But where the social workers tended to struggle was working within the boundaries that legislation and indeed their employer, the council, had actually set. Bearing in mind, many people become social workers because they're very sociable people and they want to contribute something meaningful to the lives of others, their community that they serve. What they didn't join up to do is start asking questions about how much money that customer or the family has in the bank, or how much this elderly person's property is worth if it were to be sold, or whether they would like to contribute towards a stair lift that they clearly need but maybe don't want to pay for, even if they can afford it, and many couldn't apparently. But this is the thing. If a council is going to get the best from its social workers, it needs to set clear boundaries in terms of, yes, you are a social worker and you can deliver great value for the customers and the neighbourhoods, the communities that actually trust us to do great things with them and for them and serve them, but also develop this understanding of what restrictions, what boundaries and what legislation the council actually has to operate within, because otherwise it's a win-lose either way. If the social worker has low stress tolerance, and there are many that have been on long-term sick, not because they're bad people, not because they're dodging their work, but because they feel that they're not making a contribution they wish to make, they want to make, and actually on an internal basis actually need to make for themselves to the people that they're helping. There needs to be a balance between helping other people and also working within boundaries, and this is one aspect that leaders often forget about. Everyone's so busy trying to help everyone else that the organisation begins to suffer because its budgets aren't managed and agreements are made with customers that really can't be made and should never have been made in the first place. Impulse control and excessive empathy working hand in hand. But this is the thing. Emotional intelligence is not the be-all and end-all. It is not a fix-everything tool, a resource, but what it can do is create a greater sense of awareness, a greater sense of responsibility and responsibility, the ability to respond differently to our automatic autopilot settings that our brain has for us. But without this balance, without this shared understanding, without this personal ownership and accountability, not much will change. So if you're working with a council as a social worker or any other role similar to that is helping other people, please remember that the more you help other people, there are occasions where you may not be helping yourself in terms of how your health and well-being and stress, and you may not be helping the council, which actually pays, trusts and expects you to help others, but within boundaries.